You can watch soccer, which is what I did the first two times. You can read about soccer, which I did a little bit of my second time. I did read the book some that they offered, but I never really played any soccer. I didn't do enough problems. And it wasn't until I got your course on your site and I actually saw you on Reddit that I decided, okay, I need to do some problems too. I bought your study guide, which has over 700 problems in it. And the best thing about that study guide is you do terrible on the first problems and then you get seven more of the
Mhm.
problem like that, but different. And it makes sure you've got that topic down. So I set up a time frame. I went through every single one of those problems. So I played soccer. I read about soccer. I watched soccer. I got to watch soccer live because I did your live course and I just drowned myself in it.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Wasim.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
So, congrats, Charles, on passing your FE electrical exam in first attempt with me, and I think it was a multiple attempt scenario overall, right?
Yes, yes. It was actually my third attempt. The first time I did it right out of university, I was a month out, and I did really terrible on the statistics and the circuits. Those were my two worst. But my degree, electrical engineering, but it was computers and digital, which is not really a specialization, but it's VLSI, so like very large scale integration. So
Right.
it is still circuits, but it's a lot of other things too, more computer ish. So
Right.
yeah, I didn't do too well on those. And I was in the workforce. I got in, and just a year ago, I thought, let's take it a second time. I took another course through another provider that my work had provided, and I only did the lectures. I went through every single lecture. I tried to do the quizzes that they had. I just was not a fan. They were extremely hard. It was on demand. It wasn't live, but they were previously recorded live. And those lectures were, I mean, they still did the pause, but you weren't really part of it. So there'd be a 20-minute segue of an instructor talking about something that you had no feedback in. So that was my second attempt. But then my third attempt, and I like to use this analogy, you can watch soccer, which is what I did the first two times. You can read about soccer, which I did a little bit of my second time. I did read the book some that they offered, but I never really played any soccer. I didn't do enough problems. And it wasn't until I got your course on your site and I actually saw you on Reddit that I decided, okay, I need to do some problems too. I bought your study guide, which has over 700 problems in it. And the best thing about that study guide is you do terrible on the first problems and then you get seven more of the
Mhm.
problem like that, but different. And it makes sure you've got that topic down. So I set up a time frame. I went through every single one of those problems. So I played soccer. I read about soccer. I watched soccer. I got to watch soccer live because I did your live course and I just drowned myself in it.
Yeah.
And it was great. So by the end of it, I think I was telling people after my third attempt, because people were saying, did you pass? Did you pass? I mean, you're doubtful. And I think it was you that told me, it feels like it really beats you down. Yeah, I was not confident. And so I've been telling people, it's better than the last, but I'm not sure I passed. And well,
Right.
I passed. So
Yeah. No, you clearly put in a lot of time and effort, and thanks a lot for that background and soccer analogy. Yeah, you need to, as I mentioned in the class as well, you need to really get a good grip on theory, okay, which is delving into the detail, into the nuts and bolts, right? Which I make an effort to go through in my on-demand program, and especially if you're enrolled in the live training program, because of the real-time feedback and discussions that we have, it really gives me an opportunity to explain those concepts, intricate concepts in a little bit more detail. So you need to get the theory right and then the practice. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what engineering is all about, right? If you have a good grasp on the abstract theoretical concepts and are able to apply that theory into practice, that's basically it. You are a good engineer if you can do both of those things. So you have sort of had a long journey with FE Electrical. But again, those of you who are in a repeat situation, my advice would be that in the grand scheme of things, few hiccups here and there, to be honest, they really don't mean much, especially if you have 10, 15,
yeah.
20, 25, 30 years ahead of you. The time and effort that you're going to invest right now, get the credentials, get recognized at a state level,
Mhm.
it is well worth the effort, especially in the current job market, which is super hot, right?
And I'm 5 years out, and you think, why am I still going at it and trying to do it? It's because I know 30 years from now or 20 years from now, toward the end of my career, I'm definitely not going to want to be taking an FE. So I'm trying to get
Right.
it out of the way now so that you're right. I have those opportunities.
Exactly. So in terms of your preparation, Charles, I know you invested a lot of time and effort, right? And in fact, as I mentioned before in some of our email conversations, I was like, Charles, you're probably ready to take the exam now. That was 2 months ago, right? So there was a
Yeah.
little bit of a miscalculation on your part as well in terms of booking. So yeah, how about you walk us through that?
Yeah, so I had taken your live course and I think it ended in November. So my
Yeah.
plan was to take the test in December after 2 weeks of hitting the books because I'd done the live, I'd done the lectures. So now I was ready to actually go through all 800 of your problems, I'd already taken one of your practice exams. I wanted to take the other one and then do the finalize with the book that you can buy through NCEES. And I went to go book the course and saw that I couldn't book it till February. And the last thing you said in that online course was, hey, you need to book this yesterday because it's going to fill up. It's not just engineers and it's nurses and all sorts of professions that take these testing
For
centers.
Pearson. For Pearson, yeah. At
Oh, for
Pearson.
Pearson, yes, yes, right. And I went through and I ended up just booking it right then for February, and it pushed me out, and that was a little demotivating. And as everyone knows, it's hard to stay motivated with this, but it ended up working out. I set a schedule that I think I ended up going through the study guide almost twice, just
Right.
trying to do that because I had that extra time. And yeah, book it early, book it, but don't. I mean, my problem that I had with booking it the second time, and this is actually what I was afraid of, was that I would book it and have to push it out.
Right.
I think for me, where I'm at, it's $50 to push it out, and I ended up doing that my second time because I wasn't ready,
Right.
and so I was afraid I would do that. But in this situation, booking it is almost always better because it
Yes.
makes you study. It's one of the
Exactly.
motivating factors that okay, I've got it coming, and you
Yeah.
can't just keep shoving it out. Because I actually bought the ticket to get the exam as soon as I failed my second attempt. I
Right.
had it looming in my cart, if you will,
Right.
and come up, closing in on that year because you lose the ticket if you wait a year. So
Yes.
I needed to book it. So I did have that at least, but no, definitely book a date. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so that's a great advice, and you'd be surprised sometimes students enroll in the program, and I have a one-on-one Zoom call with every single student of mine, whether you sign up for a monthly plan or a 4-month plan or a 6-month plan, or whether you're in the live
Mm-hmm.
program or not. I have a Zoom call with every single student of mine. So one of the questions that I ask them right away is that give me a specific, okay, if you don't necessarily know the date, at least give me a week. Okay, tell me which week. If you don't even know which week you're going to be taking the exam, at least zero in on the month. Okay,
Yeah.
because that is super critical, and then you work towards it, and then go ahead and book it. So Charles, I'm going to come back to another comment that you made. So your background is mostly in computers, right? More on the non-power engineering side of things, right? So
Right.
which is actually a little bit different from, I would say, 80% of my students who are coming from a power background. These
Mm-hmm.
guys struggle mostly in computer sections and software stuff and more techie stuff, right? Whereas,
Yeah.
that is something that probably is second nature to you for the most part, right?
Yeah, I maxed out the score, like the scorecard. It
Right.
maxed out on the computer and software side for me. So I didn't even open your on demand for those. Now they
Right.
were good, and there was actually stuff I was learning. That's how good your content is. As somebody who can max those out, I was still learning stuff in your content.
Thank you.
But some of that stuff, because you're right. I mean, it's the top five, right? Top five, and the computer
Yeah.
and the software is just not in there. I'd love it to be, right? But
Right.
it's not. So I ended up having to, well, okay, I've already got these down. I opened up some of the problems. I did do those because you don't want to be caught off guard with some of that
For
stuff.
sure.
And if you got the problems, do them.
For
But yeah,
sure.
those are my strong points. So
So in your case, your weaknesses are, I would say, not so strong points where your regular run-of-the-mill typical electrical engineering content like circuit analysis, power systems, electronics, some
Yep.
of EMAG here and there, some of signal processing, maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So how did you
I
cope
could
with
tell
that?
you that the exact problems that I knew going in, I'm like, these are not my strong areas. I just hope they give me an easy problem on these and make something else hard. And it was signals, EMF little bit, but the equations that they give you, depending on a 3 minute problem, right, you might have a chance on those. They're not going to get real crazy in antenna theory. You
Right.
hope not, right? And then yeah, circuits. And then I had done really terrible on statistics on my first one, but I really flipped and turned that around. And
Right.
part of that was just learning where the statistical functions were in the calculator and what they meant. So that really helped me with statistics. And the but circuits, your course went a long way just teaching me about superposition. I didn't know what superposition was until I took your course. So, and I was taking this exam. So yeah.
So what was your attitude? What was your like I wanna get a better idea of how you coped with things that you were never comfortable with, right? Because that can be flipped around as an advice for my power system students who are always scared of computer sections, right? So you are a computers
Yeah.
guy who is learning about these more, run-of-the-mill type of electrical engineering topics, which in your case are more difficult. So how did you motivate yourself? Like you're learning new things that is not easy. Okay, it's not fun. If we can get away from doing things the easy way, most of us would opt for that. Very few of us are, thrive on, always pushing the limits, right? And just the general human nature. I'm like that as well. Unless it's something that really, tickles my fancy and I'm curious about it. Generally speaking, I'll take the easy route as well. So how did you motivate yourself during the exam prep mode? I'm throwing things, for example, you're saying superposition. You're being exposed to superposition for the first time. And I'm sure in power systems, when we are discussing 30-degree phase shift and, square root 3 and delta Y transformer connections,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff is not natural. So what was going through your mind when you were pushing yourself through those topics?
So for me, I like to watch YouTube stuff. So I got on YouTube and I actually looked up, I forget the guy's channel, but he has some like detailed what even is a, well, superposition was the example, but for me, it was signals. So there was a guy who did a lecture on signal theory and what even is a Fourier transform. What does that mean? And so, like in university, you learn that theory, but we keep saying it in all these lectures. And the problem I had was that I didn't even have that base understanding of why you would want to go from one domain to the other. And after seeing somebody graph it and seeing that you can more easily spot a trend switching to one was to me enlightening. And then once I had somewhat of an understanding, it was much easier to like watch that content because otherwise you're just reading a bunch of techno babble or jargon. And
Right.
I think just having a base level understanding helps get your engineer mind going so that you can, oh, okay, this is really interesting. And you start to want to learn more about it. Okay, maybe you're not going to get a field in it, but at least you can make it through the content, right?
Right. So if I can put it this way, that in order to really start relating to a particular concept or a new base of knowledge, you need to lay the groundwork. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that you should be willing to do, willing to put in extra effort,
Yes.
using, all the resources that you have access to in order to develop that knowledge base. In other words, you have to put in extra effort before it starts making sense. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause we have, I mean, like I said, engineering brain, but if you, so like think about two plus two, that's so boring. Everybody knows two plus two.
Right.
Then if I tell you, give me the, Fourier transform of something, if you're not real familiar with that, it's a lot harder than two plus two. But the
Right.
more you familiarize something, like you just said, the groundwork, the easier it gets and you don't lose the motivation to learn it because you have that groundwork. So yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. Groundwork for sure.
Yeah. And now let's briefly talk about the next steps for you. So again, with your computer's background, you're taking the leap of faith and diving into PE power, right?
Right.
And again, so now you're basically going into the deep end of power systems
Of
engineering,
power. Yeah.
right?
And
Having
I talked to you
confidence,
about, yeah, I talked to you about doing the computer PE. I forget even the title of it now. And there's just, I look on Reddit, I Google it, I look for, see if there's any jobs in this. I'm actually happy in my current job, but, I was curious if I get this PE, is it actually going to translate anywhere? It would actually work for my current job, but I think the whole reason I even went into electrical engineering, I was going to go into computer science or computer engineering was I was told by my professors at my university that if you go electrical, you're going to have a lot more jobs open up. So if I took that advice once, why wouldn't I take that advice again? It's gotten me this far. So PE
Right.
will open it up. It's going to be a lot harder. I actually have already gone through your introduction handbook that you had, and I read through that thing last night. I did the practice problems in it. And as a little head scratcher, I'm realizing, okay, this
Yeah.
isn't software anymore. Not at all, even. I think it's not even a section in there, you know?
Right. Yeah. So I agree with you. And the other, aside from all the opportunities and whatnot, that is obviously a big plus. And at the end of the day, I mean, your career has to be rewarding on multiple fronts. It has to be rewarding in terms of the finances. You have to be able to put food on the table and support a nice lifestyle. That's all good. But at the same time, with increasing your horizon, knowledge base, um, you are able to sometimes, cross, because power systems engineering is becoming very glamorous, by the way. About five,
Yeah.
10 years ago, power systems engineers were thought of, and again, I myself am a power systems engineer, so I can say that hopefully it doesn't offend anyone, but they used to be considered very boring, right? The systems
Mhm.
that we have in place were essentially pretty archaic, dating back 1900s, late 18th. So circuit breaker is what a circuit breaker was, right? It interrupts a fault and whatnot. The modes and the means and the methods have sort of changed a little bit, but it's the same old three-phase system that Nikola Tesla Edison, these guys came up with, and it's been there. The transformers out there in the field, which I myself have actually seen, that are 60 years old, okay, during the Second World War era. Actually, some even before that, right? Switchgears have been in place. So it was considered a very rusty, dinosaur type of field of electrical engineering, but it's all changing very quickly. It's becoming glamorous. Why? Because electrical engineers are at the forefront of your energy crisis. Okay. They are the ones who are going to be relied upon in order to solve the energy solutions, come up with renewables, energy integration. And so all of that really requires a lot of creative thinking. And there are not many people out there who even have a skill set. So even if you're entering into the industry, with not much expertise, you're not very far off from people who are already working actually, especially in those subdomains. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
one. Secondly, you have that overlap or intersection between electrical engineering and even, I would say, software and computer and cybersecurity, right?
I was just thinking about that for like SCADA and power
Data
systems.
and the security.
Yeah.
So if somebody
And
has a
security of
little
it.
bit of a software background, if you can think through like what are the loopholes, in the grid, right? Which someone can, let's
Yeah.
say nefariously, someone comes along and an external entity is trying to hack into the system. So it's not just software engineers who are gonna, do the patchwork and fix things. You also need somebody who can say that this is a critical asset. If this goes down, this is what's going to happen. So we really need to have 10 layers of protection on this and followed by this and that, right? So the cybersecurity in the electrical domain is a brand new field. And I've already started hearing from my students that there's some really high paying jobs that are opening up in that domain, right? So that's another intersection. EVs, everyone knows that electrical engineers are being absorbed by electrical vehicles, battery storage solutions, energy storage solutions. So if you think about it, it has sort of skipped so many steps, electrical engineering,
Yeah.
and has just propelled itself into the front, of a lot of other, including software, that has sort of jumped ahead and taken a quantum leap and become really the 21st century go-to profession.
Yeah,
Okay.
you mentioned software. I have, or well, security really. I have my Security Plus certification and going into power. So yes, I'm well aware of the security issues that we've
Right.
had with that recently. Yes.
Yeah. And this is something that, trust me, like governments at different levels are already thinking of it because, you
Mhm.
know, um,
Infrastructure. Yeah.
I mean, with the war that is going on currently, you see that the power assets are the first assets that get targeted. Okay. So your
Mhm.
water supplies and your electricity network. So if someone is able to take those down, then it basically means that you have almost crippled your opponent. And this is something that everyone is looking at, that how secure, how stable, how robust the grid is. So I think 5 years, 10 years from now, this is already an active area of research, and it will
Mhm.
become even more and more critical because
I
without
agree.
electricity, I mean, you
And
cannot defend
internet and
yourself.
network, just all that infrastructure is going to completely flip in the next five,
Completely
ten
full.
years. Yeah,
Right.
for
And the
sure.
whole thing will just collapse, right? I mean, if from a security point of view as well, if you don't have internet, if you are not able to communicate, I mean, you're a sitting duck basically, right?
Yeah.
So this again, to put things in perspective, these are all the challenges that power systems engineers of the 21st century leading into the next decade or so are going to be encountering. And so that's why I'm saying, like, I'm really upbeat about it. Some people say that, okay, it's because of the funding that is happening from the government. The federal government is pouring in money in renewables. So that's why it's short term. I feel like, okay, that might have something to do with some select job growths that are happening in certain industries. But by and large, the whole landscape is like we are not building bridges, right? So the way
Sure.
bridges are built, and again, no disrespect to civil or structural engineers,
I work with a lot of civil engineers.
right? So that I
Yeah.
don't see, I cannot visualize, where civil engineering is just gonna sort of take a quantum leap, right? The type of
Right.
quantum leap that electrical has taken and literally injected itself in so many different areas. So,
Right.
which
Well, I
is
think it's a balance too, because we walk into the buildings that the civil engineers help build and can make sure they don't fall on us. But then also, you want to go into the building. Nobody wants to sit in a dark building. We need
of
our
course.
computers to work. So there is a balance there. We need both to want to go into the buildings for
No,
sure.
of course. Like, I mean, when people say engineering, the first thing that comes to their mind is civil engineering, and that's again,
There's
as
a
I said, no,
reason for that. Have you seen the pass rates on the FE or the PE? It's mostly civil, I think.
right. I mean, the
Everybody's civil.
volume is all civil. But
Right.
what I'm trying to say is that, like, as an engineering discipline, when you think of, okay, there might be some really crazy structures that will be built, reclaiming land, and in Middle East they have those man-made islands, so all of that fancy
Oh,
stuff,
yes. Yeah.
right? But it is sort of an incremental extension of what we already know. Whereas electrical,
Mhm.
what it is going through is harnessing the power of sun, and it can be a complete game changer. So in that sense,
Yeah.
it's again, I'm biased. I'm a power systems engineer, so I love power
Well,
systems engineering. I can keep
yeah, I
on
try
going
to
on and on.
try not to be too biased. I watch a guy called Grady. I don't know if you've seen his YouTube channel, Practical Engineering. He
No, I
does
don't.
electrical stuff, but he also does civil stuff. But he's a
Okay.
civil in Texas with a PE. And as an electrical engineer, I actually find his stuff interesting. But he talks about some of the technology they're using for power systems, but also he's got a security video on there recently about power grid failure up north because of
Okay.
security issues. And
Yeah.
so I go both ways on it. I'm not so biased yet. We'll see once I get my PE if I'm if I'm a
Sounds
little
good.
more biased.
All right, awesome. Thanks a lot for your time, Charles. It was
Yeah,
nice chatting you. It was nice being part of your journey, and I look forward to helping you through with your P power exam preparation. Lots of good
absolutely.
advices that you've provided to the viewers, and I just like to finish off by saying that if you have a strong enough reason to get this done, anyone can pass this exam, but don't underestimate it. Okay, don't be complacent about it. It still requires a lot of time and effort. You have to be putting in the energy and be committed to getting this done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Otherwise,
for
it's
having me, Wasim.
yeah. Thank you.